Hello everyone, Minna Taylor here, founder of Energize Your Voice, a communication coaching and training company based right here in New York City, but working globally in this virtual landscape. We have for almost a decade been supporting individuals and organizations around key skills like public speaking, presentation skills, and storytelling. And so today we are going to focus on that third one, storytelling. We have seen it as one of the most important tools to creating influence, impact, buy-in from your audience, and leveraging it even in a sales conversation. So today, we're going to look at 5 keys to telling a compelling story. Get ready. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is having a structure or a template for telling a story. Now, obviously, we don't want it to feel pre-rehearsed or memorized or move into a space that might feel slightly mechanical, but it's really good as you're engaging either in something that is prepared or something that's extemporaneous in terms of storytelling to have a little bit of a framework to guide you through your ideas so that you can ultimately make your way to a culminating point or call to action. So let's talk about a general framework for telling a compelling story. The first piece of this is creating the status quo. So how does the world exist right now? Well, Mary is playing in the field and the grass is green and the day is like any other day. When all of a sudden, so in order to appreciate that all of a sudden, which we'll get to in a moment, we need to understand where we exist now. Right? What is the status quo? Where are we living currently? That all of a sudden moment is the second piece of the puzzle. It's called the inciting incident. So what is the thing that comes in and shifts the status quo off course? Right? Mary's just sitting there without a care in the world on her green grass when all of a sudden a comet comes out of the sky and now she's running for her life through the neighborhood, calling to all of her neighbors, right? So it's what is the thing that sets the status quo into a new direction or on a course or a journey toward transformation. So we can think about it like that as well. Third thing around this is after the inciting incident, in order to what's called increase dramatic tension, so to get people on the edge of their seats, right? What's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? Well, we want Mary to be going through what are called a series of obstacles. So the things that really increase her need or her drive to resettle back into something that feels stable. So right now she's moving through chaos and meteors are coming and now she's out of water and she finally found shelter and then the house catches on fire. You know, this is poor Mary, she's going through quite a journey. But what are the things that move the story forward, that keep people engaged, that can really build some context and valuable information around the thing that is ultimately going to solve this problem? So you want to increase dramatic tension or the need for some sort of resolution. That's ultimately going to work you up to a tipping point, and that's what we call the climax. So the point at which everything shifts. And all of a sudden, she got to the top of the mountain and she looked above it, right? So it's that moment where everything starts to reveal itself as moving toward what's called a cathartic resolution. So I've had my status quo, something happens, oh my gosh, everything's different now, and now this thing's different, and this thing's different, and this thing's different, and I just can't take it anymore, and then all of a sudden, it's so clear to me. And then I work my way down into a cathartic resolution, which is why I need you to, or which is why you should learn, or the thing I really want you to remember is. So working your way toward that value add, a clarity of point, or a clear call to action. So that's a general structure or framework. Status quo, inciting incident, series of obstacles to increase dramatic tension, working your way up to the climax, and then finding your way toward a cathartic resolution and really tying it all up with a nice neat bow with some sort of call to action or value proposition at the very end. So that's the structure. The second thing you want to think about when telling a story is how can you allow people to imbue their own experience onto it? So if it's too general, for example, people might appreciate the story, but they don't really buy in to the narrative. So there's a real simple key that I want you to think about. The second thing I need you to consider here is moving from the personal into the universal. What I mean by that is any story that starts off with a real personalized point of view, a sense of investment as you, even if you're speaking to a third party, making it really specific about one person, about one incident, about one moment in time, about one clear example. So that personal story will then illuminate a universal concept. So Mary was here and this is the journey she went on and all of these things, but really people all over the world are dealing with this as well. And it allows people to immediately have some sort of emotional connection to the story through the personalization of it. And it allows you as a storyteller to have an emotional investment in the content. And then everybody can understand why it matters by bringing it into a universal context. So personal to universal is a really great sort of slide to think about when you're constructing a story. Number 3, we have a tool at Energize Your Voice called Zoom In, Zoom Out. Let me break that down for you. Let's use the example of the personal or the story structure. The zoom in moment, a lot of times when we're constructing a story or a presentation, we tend to include way too much information, but that information isn't always necessarily of value. We just add a bunch of things. It's the and then syndrome. Instead of trying to add a multitude of things, I want more detail around fewer things. For example, I leave my house and I walk to the subway and I'm walking to the subway. I don't need a lot of detail around that. So that's a zoom out moment. It moves the action along and it just kind of gets things flowing a little bit. And I'm walking down to the subway when all of a sudden I see a homeless man. Zoom in. And I looked into his eyes and the way that his eyes were just sparkling a little bit. So it's this moment to zoom in so that people can bring their entire imagination into this one moment. The power of the zoom in is phenomenal. People, without even realizing it, move into this sort of trance-like state when they feel like they are really being able to surrender to the process of storytelling. It is something, I don't care how powerful you are, I don't care who your audience is. If you effectively use this zoom in, zoom out tactic, you will create such a deep level of buy-in and investment from your listener. It's also going to shift the pace. So I've got my zoom in moment and you can even see I'm doing it with my body, right? Zoom in, detail, 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 and then zoom out and then I move it along and I have to get on the subway because I got to go to work. So it allows the pace of the story to keep people engaged. It has a certain rhythm to it of action and suspension and action and suspension. So shifting things up will always keep your audience guessing and it will keep them enrolled. The fourth thing you need to think about here, and this is that we're building here, can you tell? So we've done our zoom in, we've done our zoom out. The fourth thing you want to remember here is to incite the senses. So when I'm describing something, when I'm in a zoom in moment, for example, or when I'm establishing a status quo in my structure, I want to touch on all of the things that will allow people to completely put their focus on creating that environment, that experience, that value add in their imagination. So inciting the senses, it tasted like, it felt like, it smelled like, I heard, the way it made me feel. So then we're not purely reliant on the verbal aspects of the story. We can now move into engaging the visceral experience on the part of your audience. So inciting the senses is going to be a great tool. If you ever feel like you're losing your audience, zoom in. and incite the senses and give people an opportunity to surrender to the process of storytelling. It's amazing. It's an amazing tool. I promise you. Try it in a meeting next time. And stories do not have to be used in any specific context. We are human. We want to hear them all the time. We were brought up on stories. We are a culture. We are a global culture of storytellers. People will always want to hear them. Don't be afraid to use them in any interaction. It's always going to be of value. The last thing you need to remember here, tip number 5, and this is so important, is voice. We are talking about storytelling here, not story reading. So if you want to tell a compelling story, if you want to bring people into this journey, if you want to leverage this as a tool for influence and impact, your voice has to follow suit. If we're painting strong pictures and inciting the senses and zooming in and giving extraordinary detail, if we're trying to increase dramatic tension by incorporating series of obstacles that are preventing me from getting my ultimate objective, if I'm not engaging my voice in a similar way that follows that journey, that allows people to go through an experience, then I am doing the story and my audience and myself as a storyteller a grave disservice, because a foundational quality will be lost. You can think about it as slightly performative, but really I just want to say that it's elevated in its presence. So make sure your voice is present. Play around with the way in which you elongate vowels, in which you can create asides with your voice, this thing and this thing, and then this thing and this thing. So how can you really use your voice as an instrument, as an extra tool to paint the picture of the story you're trying to tell? So keys to telling a compelling story: know your structure, have a general framework so that at any given time you can dive right into a story and know how to set it up in a way where your audience will be completely enraptured. Number 2, thinking about a general structure or a general framework about how to create buy-in and then how to create influence. Move from the personal storytelling into the universal application. So moving from personal to universal. The third thing, zoom in, zoom out, adding in all those details, but really shifting pace so I can move the action forward and then dive more deeply into moments that really matter the most. Number 4, incite the senses, making sure people can imbue their imagination, their personal experience. It's a visceral aspect of storytelling, not purely verbal. And then 5th, the voice. Storytelling, not story reading. My name has been Minna Taylor. These are your keys to telling a compelling story. If you want to learn more, follow us on Instagram at Energize Your Voice. And of course, you can check out our website, energizeyourvoice.net, for more information. Read our blogs, engage with us there. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Go forth, tell stories.